For 800 years, no one could find the tomb of Genghis Khan until a group of thieves found the map, and that map was a man. What lost treasure or place from history would you most want to find? In this video, we will tell the incredible story of how modern science and a historical obsession converged to unlock the final secret of history's greatest conqueror. In the heart of the Swiss Alps, carved into the slope of an inaccessible peak overlooking the icy shimmer of Lake Geneva, there was a structure, the Elysian Fields Cryogenic Preservation Facility. This was a modern pyramid built for the pharaohs of the 21st century, for the ultra-wealthy who believed their fortunes could conquer even death. It was a temple dedicated to the cold and eternal silence of liquid nitrogen, a place where the ruthless advance of time was brought to a halt. From the outside, it was a nearly invisible sanctuary, seamlessly integrated with the natural granite of the mountain, betrayed only by a few titanium doors and an array of sensors. Inside, however, the world operated in an absolute order, purged of human emotion and chaos. The corridors were more sterile than a hospital's intensive care unit. The air was filtered to forbid even the slightest speck of dust, and every surface was coated with an antibacterial polymer. The only sound was the low, perpetual hum of liquid nitrogen flowing through the pipes within the walls, and the faint whir of service robots gliding across the floors. In the deepest, most secure chamber of this silent and cold kingdom, a section known as the Hall of the Immortals, dozens of stainless steel cryopods were arranged side by side like sarcophagi. Inside each one lay a human body frozen in the hope of one day reawakening in the future. And one of these pods was more mysterious than the others. Instead of a name, it bore only a code name, Khan. Khan was the facility's greatest secret. A reclusive tech billionaire who had died years ago, he had paid an imaginable fortune to keep his identity private. He had lived his life like a ghost, never allowing a single photograph to be leaked. And now his lifeless body lay in a sleep beyond time, behind the supposedly impenetrable security of Elysian Fields. But on that night, this impenetrable fortress was about to receive unexpected guests. Under the howl of the bitter wind that licked the alpine peaks, 3 black trucks with their headlights off advanced along the single private road leading to the facility. When the truck stopped, a team of 12, clad head to toe in black tactical gear, disembarked with the silence and precision of a military unit. At their head was a man named Cyrus Vance. Cyrus was a former Special Forces soldier. The scars on his face and the cold, calculating glint in his eyes told of a man who had seen the darkest face of war and danger. But he was no longer a soldier. He was a treasure hunter, and the treasure he was after was far more valuable than gold or jewels. Within seconds, the team reached the outer facility's perimeter. This was not a brute force assault. It was a symphony. One member neutralized the laser sensor grid with tiny mirrors that reflected the invisible beams, while another blinded the facility's quantum-encrypted communications with a signal jammer that broadcast a pre-recorded all-clear loop. When they reached the titanium doors, they used no lockpicks or explosives. A technician attached a small device to the door's control panel and within seconds exploited a software vulnerability known only to its manufacturer, forcing the door into maintenance mode. With an ominous hiss, the door slid open. Inside, Cyrus and his team moved like ghosts. They temporarily blinded the pressure and heat sensors using the cold vapor created by liquid nitrogen. They passed by data servers that held billions in potential blackmail material, past the pods containing other famous billionaires and politicians, without a moment's hesitation. Their target was singular. Upon reaching the Hall of the Immortals, Cyrus keyed the code name Khan into his tablet.
The pod's location glowed with a red dot in a private section at the far end of the hall. The team removed the pod from its platform and placed it into a specially designed portable cooling unit. The entire operation, from their entry to their exit, took exactly 12 minutes. They left behind no alarms, no broken locks, no signs of forced entry. Only an empty platform labeled Khan and an incomprehensible silence.
The next morning, when the theft was discovered during a routine inspection, it was not just a robbery, it was a humiliation. The place that claimed to be the most secure in the world had been penetrated by a phantom army. The case became a global scandal and landed on the desk of Interpol. But the experienced detectives leading the investigation were, for the first time in their careers, faced with a crime that made no sense. Why had the thieves stolen only a single, unidentified body? There was no ransom demand, no political message. All that remained was a mystery that pushed the boundaries of logic. It was at this point, as a last resort, that they knocked on the door of Dr. Anya Sharma. Anya received the Interpol agents reluctantly in her small office at Oxford, which was overflowing with books and maps. She was a woman in her 40s, her eyes carrying both the spark of genius and a weariness from the cruelty of the academic community. Her career had been derailed a few years prior because of a paper she had published. In it, she had suggested that specific genetic markers in the Y chromosomes of great conquerors, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, could subconsciously influence the migration and settlement patterns of their descendants. It was a radical theory she called genetic memory, which her colleagues had branded as scientific nonsense. When the agents explained the details of the Elysian Fields heist, Anya's eyes lit up with a professional excitement for the first time in years. To the astonishment of the agents, she stood up and walked to the giant world map in her office. "They're not asking for a ransom because what they want is more valuable than money," she said, her voice confident. "And this isn't a kidnapping, it's a retrieval. They didn't steal a person or an object. They stole a map." The lead agent laughed sardonically. "What map, doctor? Did they tattoo it onto the corpse?" "No," Anya said, looking directly into the agent's eyes. "The map isn't a tattoo. The map is the corpse. It's inside his DNA. What they stole wasn't just the body of a billionaire. They stole the blood of Genghis Khan." The Interpol agents left Anya's office, convinced that she was on the verge of madness. The blood of Genghis Khan theory did not even make it as a footnote in the official report. The investigation continued along traditional lines, following money trails and known criminal organizations, but every path led to a dead end. Anya was once again ostracized, this time by law enforcement, just as she had been by the academic world. But she knew she was right. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, in the middle of the vast steppes of Mongolia, in the shadow of the Altai Mountains, Cyrus Vance's team had set up a secret laboratory with the stolen body. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned Soviet military base, but inside, it was a center equipped with the latest genetic and geophysical technology. Cyrus was no ordinary treasure hunter. He was a visionary, a captive of an obsession that had made finding the tomb of Genghis Khan the sole and absolute purpose of his life. In the laboratory, scientists and technicians began working on the tissue samples taken from Khan's body. Their goal was not merely to confirm his lineage. Their purpose was much deeper. Cyrus had devoted years to researching the old legend that historians had dismissed, the legend of the blood map. According to the legend, Khan's tomb was encoded into the geography of Mongolia, its magnetic fields,
the flow of its rivers, the alignment of its mountains. And this code, this colossal natural lock, could only be felt by his descendants who carried a specific genetic predisposition. Cyrus's plan was to awaken this genetic predisposition, this dormant compass, with modern science. They were comparing the specific epigenetic markers in Khan's DNA, genes that are activated in response to environmental factors, with the geological and magnetic maps of Mongolia. They were not looking for a needle in a haystack. They were trying to build a magnet that knew where the needle was. Anya, in her office, continued her own war. Having lost hope in Interpol, she focused on her own research. Khan's identity was a secret, but there must have been people who did business with him, who served him. For days, for weeks, she scoured financial records, corporate partnerships, every crumb of public data. And finally, she found a connection. A foundation that managed a small part of Khan's wealth was regularly making large donations to a little-known historical society that focused on the Mongol Empire.
Anya began to study the society's publications, articles, and forums. And there, in a footnote of an article written by a Russian historian in the 1950s that no one had taken seriously, she found what she was looking for. The footnote mentioned the blood map legend, but it added a detail. According to the legend, this genetic sensing ability was linked to the magnetoreception gene, the same gene found in migratory birds and other animals that allows them to perceive the Earth's magnetic field. And a specific variant of this gene was unique to Khan's bloodline. Lightning struck in Anya's mind. This was no longer a legend. This was a testable, scientific hypothesis. If the thieves were looking for this specific gene, there was only one place that could activate it: the region of Mongolia with the largest and strangest known magnetic anomaly, the sacred mountain, Burkhan Khaldun. Anya compiled a comprehensive file combining all her data, the historical texts, the genetic theory, and the geological maps, and she once again stood before the skeptical Interpol agent who had dismissed her. This time, she didn't have a theory. She had a map. Faced with the logical consistency and detail of the evidence Anya presented, the agent had to put his skepticism aside. Now it was a race. By the time Anya and the Interpol team arrived in Mongolia, Cyrus's team was already there. At the foot of the sacred Burkhan Khaldun mountain, they were conducting their final scans with ground-penetrating radars and magnetometers calibrated with the genetic data. And just as Anya's team was approaching, one of Cyrus's technicians shouted, "I've got it! 100 meters below the surface, a massive, non-metallic, man-made void." They had found the location of the tomb. At the entrance of the newly discovered tomb, which was opened by a hidden mechanism, the two groups came face to face. On one side, Cyrus and his armed men, on the verge of achieving his life's purpose. On the other, Anya and the Interpol team, in shock and awe at witnessing this historic moment. "This is the greatest discovery in history," Cyrus said, a mad, triumphant expression on his face. "It is mine." "This is not a treasure, Cyrus," Anya replied, her voice trembling. "This is a sacred grave. You must leave it in peace. The legends speak of a curse that will fall upon those who open the tomb." "Curses are for superstitious fools, Doctor," Cyrus laughed. "I believe in science, and science tells me to open this door." But just as Cyrus's men were preparing their equipment to force the door, the mountain made its own decision. An earth tremor, common in the region but feeling like a divine intervention at that moment, shook the entire valley. From above, massive rocks and earth began to slide down with a terrifying roar. The landslide, within seconds, sealed the newly opened tomb entrance with thousands of tons of earth and rock, as if it had never existed. The mountain,
had taken its secret back. Both teams were forced to retreat, helpless in the face of nature's overwhelming power. Cyrus had collapsed to his knees, watching the purpose of his life disappear forever before his eyes. He had failed. Anya, however, stood tall, looking at the mountain. In a way, she had succeeded. The tomb was protected. She understood in that moment that the blood map might have been real after all, but its purpose was not to lead to the tomb, but to ensure it was never found. Perhaps the last and greatest secret of Genghis Khan was not what was inside his tomb, but that its location would remain hidden forever. Some secrets were not meant to be solved by science, but to be protected by time and nature. And on that day, at the foot of that sacred mountain, history had declared its own victory against technology. History's greatest secrets sometimes lie behind locks that even the most advanced technologies cannot break. For more stories like this, where ancient wisdom collides with modern science, don't forget to subscribe to Parallel Storylines. See you in the next case file.